Welcome back. In this part, we are going to discuss the need for protection against Leviathan. Leviathan stands for the potentially all-powerful modern state. And this potential of an immense concentration of power in the person of the head of state, the monarch, became manifest in the absolutist state, especially in France in the 17th and 18th century. And looking at this picture of the royal castle in Versailles, you can feel that concentrated power. In England, attempts at establishing a French-style absolute monarchy were not successful. However, also in England, the state increased in power, except that at its centre was Parliament, not an absolute monarch. The full impact of the centralised state power exercised by Parliament in London was especially tangible in British colonies in North America. Colonists started to feel oppressed. In particular, high taxes imposed by Parliament in London were perceived as unjust, as you can see on the cartoon. This started to spark violent protests. And that kind of incidents ended up setting in motion a process that finally led to the colonists declaring their independence from the British motherland. On the picture you can see the signing ceremony of the American Declaration of Independence dating back to 1776. And this document, this Declaration of Independence, is interesting with regard to human rights. Human rights are central to that declaration. They provide a central reason for political action. What we can read here is the following. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. So what we have here is that human rights are declared to be the reason, the justification for any government. And as soon as a government is not able to live up to its duty to secure human rights, it becomes legitimate to alter or abolish it, to topple the government in place, which shows you the revolutionary potential of the concept of human rights. The man who drafted the American Declaration of Independence was Thomas Jefferson, one of the American founding fathers. And in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., you can see this desk on which Jefferson allegedly drafted that Declaration of Independence. In the Library of Congress, you can also visit the library, the personal library of Thomas Jefferson. And what you can see there is that all of the volumes of Enlightenment philosophy, European philosophers, are part of that library. Note also Thomas Jefferson's motto top on the slide, I cannot live without books. Another aspect of Thomas Jefferson is this. What you can see here, that handwritten page, is a page out of his farm book. And this page and others in that farm book contain a detailed list of all the slaves Thomas Jefferson owned throughout his life, and this amounts to about 600. This points towards a worrying contradiction right at the start of the human rights story. Remember what Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence? That all men are created equal with unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And at the same time, Jefferson turns out to have been a slaveholder, the owner of around 600 slaves. How does that fit together? Be that as it may, in any case, the idea of human rights proved to be central to the political discourse in the newly founded United States of America. In the years following the independence, the Americans created their Constitution, and in 1791 they added the so-called Bill of Rights in the form of the 10 First Amendments to the Constitution, and this became one of the most influential human rights documents in the history of human rights. I think we should add it to the picture on the blackboard. Another highly influential human rights document is, of course, the French Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen. That was adopted in the course of the French Revolution by the National Assembly in 1789. And looking at that picture, that painting dating back to the same year when that declaration was adopted, looking at that painting, you can feel the status that was attributed to that document. A quasi-religious status was attributed to that document. Let's go through some of the articles. First, we have Article 1, according to which men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Social distinctions can be founded only on the common good, so equality of all men. Not women. Women are not mentioned here, which is one of the debates surrounding the French Declaration of 1789, but there are other questions arising here as well. Maybe you remember these pictures. Men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Article 3 of the Declaration states that the principle of any sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. Nobody, no individual can exert authority which does not emanate expressly from it. What we have here is a shift in the concept of sovereignty. Originally, in the idea of Jean Bodin, sovereignty was an attribute of the monarch, of the head of state. In the new perspective of the French Revolution, sovereignty belongs to the nation as a whole. Article 6 states that all citizens are equally admissible to all public dignities, places, and employments according to their capacity and without distinction other than that of their virtues and of their talents. What you have here is the transition of the former social order featuring 3 different estates to a new order where everybody belongs to the same category of citizens. Articles 10 and 11. No one may be disturbed for his opinions, even religious ones, provided that their manifestation does not trouble the public order established by law. And Article 11, the free communication of thoughts and of opinions is one of the most precious rights of man. Any citizen thus may speak, write, print freely, except to respond to the abuse of this liberty in the cases determined by the law. The question arises of how this fits together with the atrocities that have been committed in the name of the revolution, with people being persecuted for their political and religious opinions and being killed for their political and religious opinions. Several 100,000 victims produced that way during the French Revolution. Last but not least, we have Article 17, according to which property being an inviolable and sacred right, no one can be deprived of private usage. If it is not, when the public necessity legally noted evidently requires it, and under the condition of just and prior indemnity. Property, the right to property, is among the primary concerns of the merchant class that rose to power in the French Revolution. And at the time, the right to property was considered the most fundamental human right, the most fundamental of all. The French Revolution is a central element completing our picture on the blackboard. Let's try to sum up. The real reason why human rights have become a central part of legal practice today is that they answer a need of protection against the potentially totalitarian modern state. This concept of human rights was born in the context of sharply increasing state power. It is closely related to the rise of modern nation-states in Europe. Sovereignty is the very essence of the modern state. This in turn means that the modern state is potentially all-powerful and potentially totalitarian. Potentially unlimited state power creates a need for protection. This is where human rights and fundamental freedoms kick in. Protecting individuals against Leviathan is the primary function of those rights. And what about the potential of the concept of human rights? Is it a path towards a paradise on earth? In their origin, human rights are a Western concept, but their aspirations soon became universal under the influence of the philosophy of enlightenment. In the era of individualism, the idea of human rights must seem particularly appealing. Those rights that can be claimed by every single individual. That corresponds exactly to the individualist perspective. Human rights carry with them general promises, high promises of dignity, liberty, and happiness for all without discrimination throughout the world. But can we really expect that they lead us to a sort of paradise on earth? As we have seen, the human rights story started off with national declarations such as the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen and the American Bill of Rights. But how have human rights also become part of international law? That is the next question we are going to address. But before we do that, I think we deserve some coffee.